Like Sarah Biffen, the armless painter, Betty Broadbent, and Melvin, better known as the human blockhead, not everyone found their way into the spotlight under ordinary circumstances. These people turned what many would have viewed as a disadvantage into something that amazed and shocked audiences everywhere. Alongside them, Anna Swan, the famous giantess, and Giacomo and Giovanni Battista Tocci. The remarkable conjoined twins proudly showed what made them different before fascinated crowds. Today, we travel back in time to revisit their stories and discover the lives of 15 amazing human freaks who shocked the entire world. Number 15. Pearl and Ruby Jones. Pearl and Ruby never had the chance to decide whether they wanted an audience. These conjoined twins were still babies when adults began taking them around the U.S. during the late 1800s, displaying them before paying crowds as a sideshow attraction. Their little lives lasted only 15 months, yet more than half of that time was reportedly spent traveling and being exhibited. That detail alone makes their story difficult to stomach. While strangers stared, whispered, and paid for a closer look, Pearl and Ruby were far too young to understand why they were constantly surrounded by unfamiliar faces. Then, before either child reached her second birthday, both died under circumstances that remain unclear. There was no long career or happy retirement waiting at the end. Only two infants whose physical differences became somebody else's business. Sideshows produced plenty of astonishing stories, but this one leaves very little to celebrate. Pearl and Ruby weren't performers chasing fame, they were simply babies. Number 14. Charlie Bowman. For Charlie Bowman, the circus came after a childhood that few people could have endured. His father, a stuntman, was killed after helping a Jewish family escape, while his mother was imprisoned at Ravensbrück. Charlie survived the war, served briefly in the German Navy, and eventually found himself grooming horses for Paula Bush's small circus. That humble job opened an unexpected door. In 1947, Harry Williams brought him into Circus Williams and taught him how to handle dangerous animals. Then Williams died during a rehearsal accident, leaving Charlie with 6 lions and barely any time to prepare. Within 2 weeks, he had them ready. His reputation only grew afterward. Circus Roland, Bertram Mills, and Blackpool Tower followed before America Called in 1964. There, Charlie eventually worked with 16 Tigers and became executive performance director for Ringling Bros. He retired in 1991 and died 10 years later at 72. Considering where his story began, that journey was pretty mind-blowing. Number 13. William Hutchings. Long before anyone could pull out a calculator, William could make one seem unnecessary. Better known as the Boy Lightning calculator, he had a superpower to solve big mathematical problems entirely inside his head. Give him numbers to add, subtract, or multiply, and the answer could arrive before many spectators had properly understood the question. P.T. Barnum quickly saw why that would draw a crowd, and Hutchings became one of the attractions at Barnum's American Museum. His gift survived far longer than the building itself, which was destroyed by fire in 1868. A few years later, William demonstrated his mental arithmetic at the White House before President Ulysses S. Grant. Yet he didn't spend the rest of his life simply showing off quick answers. Hutchings eventually turned his methods toward education and wrote a book explaining how others could improve their own calculating skills. What began as an astonishing public act became something far more useful. Knowledge he could actually pass along. Number 12. The Stone Eater's Well. Eating stones might not be the most sensible way to settle an upset stomach, but Thomas Gobsill thought otherwise. He began swallowing pebbles for his digestion and eventually carried over 200 inside him, enough to make a rattling sound whenever he moved. Stranger still, he wasn't alone. Stories of stone eaters stretch back centuries, including a Prague performer recorded as early as 1006. Francesco Battaglia later became famous for the act of swallowing spoonfuls of rocks before following them with beer and tobacco. By 1788, another showman was even charging spectators 2 shillings to bring along stones for him to eat. The secret, thankfully, was usually less horrifying than advertised, rather than digesting them. Skilled performers learned to swallow objects and bring them back up whenever they pleased. Houdini reportedly mastered the technique, and modern regurgitators such as Stevie Starr carried the tradition forward. Still, watching somebody swallow a rock takes nerve even when we know the secret. Number 11. Miss Rosina Rose Foster. Miss Rosina Rose could do with her feet what plenty of us struggle to manage with both hands. Without arms, she learned to use her toes with remarkable control, eventually turning those skills into a stage career across Europe. Rosina could crochet, thread a needle, write beautifully, and sign autographs while curious spectators watched from only a few feet away. Yet there was nothing wild about her performance. Dressed in elegant gowns and seated beside carefully arranged tables, she worked slowly enough for everyone to see that no trick was involved. That calmness made the whole thing even better. Instead of asking an audience to feel sorry for her, Rosina simply showed them what she could do. Sadly, much of her private life has slipped through the cracks, leaving photographs and old advertisements to tell most of what remains. Still, those images reveal plenty. A beautifully dressed woman calmly working with her toes, while an entire room wondered how she made something so difficult look completely natural. Number 10. The Cristiani family well. 26 Cristianis under one circus tent meant somebody was probably about to do something outrageous on horseback. Their family connection to Italian circus life reached into the 1840s. Yet the performance that truly caught American attention arrived in New York in 1934. John Ringling North had persuaded them to pause their own operation and appear with Ringling Bros, bringing a bareback routine unlike anything local spectators were used to seeing. Lucio could somersault between galloping horses. Cheetah danced atop Lenvier while the animal charged ahead. Orton's went further, becoming the first woman credited with landing a triple somersault from a teeterboard onto a chair. By 1949, the Cristianis were ready to gamble on themselves and launched the Cristiani Brothers Circus. Within 9 years, it ranked as North America's second largest, hauling its equipment in over 50 trucks and becoming the first circus to tour Alaska. Financial pressures eventually closed it during the 1960s, but the Cristiani name never entirely left the ring. Number 9. Giacomo and Giovanni Battista. Toci Giacomo and Giovanni Battista shared something neither brother could ever walk away from: the same lower body. The Italian twins had separate heads, arms, hearts, and upper bodies, but below the waist, their anatomy joined into a single pair of legs. Learning to move was especially difficult because each brother reportedly controlled one leg, meaning even a simple step required cooperation. Their extraordinary appearance soon carried them through Europe and America, where they were introduced as the two-headed boy. But audiences discovered 2 distinct personalities rather than one curiosity. Giacomo and Giovanni could speak independently, answer questions, read, and write at the same time, sometimes concentrating on entirely different tasks. They usually appeared in smart, specially tailored clothing, which gave their exhibitions a surprisingly formal feel. Eventually, the brothers had enough of public attention. They returned to Italy and withdrew almost completely from view. What happened afterward remains uncertain, which feels strangely fitting. After spending their childhood being watched, the Toci brothers finally managed to keep part of their lives entirely to themselves. Number 8. Roger Boyd Sr. 13-year-old Boyd left his Virginia family farm with no grand career waiting for him, only a road and whatever happened to come along. What came along was a Downey Bros circus truck. Roger caught the ride, began looking after animals, and soon developed a particular attachment to elephants. 4 years later, he was already working them before spectators. Downey Bros led to World Bros, Tom Mix, Jack Hoxsey, and eventually Floyd King's The Hit Parade, where Roger met Garnett Davis in 1939. They married the next year. World War II briefly pulled him away, although ordinary life never quite suited him afterward. Roger tried store shows, traveled with a mobile arcade, managed the Duke of Paducah sideshow, painted show trucks, and eventually became ringmaster for King Bros and Clyde Beatty Cole Bros. Even retirement took its time finding him. He continued taking shrine dates until 1986. Roger died following a stroke in 1991, nearly 60 years after one lucky truck ride changed his direction. Number 7. Eli. The legless acrobat. Calling Eli Bowen the legless acrobat sounds impossible until we hear what he could actually do. Folkamelia had left him with feet attached close to his hips and no normally developed legs, yet childhood became a long lesson in finding his own way around. Wooden blocks strapped to his hands helped him move, while years of practice gave his upper body tremendous power. At 13, Eli entered Major Brown's Coliseum and began doing the last things spectators expected: cartwheels, backflips, balancing routines, and demanding acrobatics. Curiosity may have brought people toward the tent, but skill gave them a reason to stay. Eli eventually earned recognition as a genuine strongman rather than merely an unusual attraction. Away from the sawdust, another part of his story surprised those who underestimated him. He married, became a father to 4 children, and lived until 80. An 1880 pamphlet, The Wonder of the Wide World, celebrated his achievements while he was still alive, and the title suited him rather nicely. Number 6. Betty Broadbent. Betty Broadbent was only 14 when a meeting in Atlantic City quietly changed the direction of her life. While working as a nanny, she encountered tattooed performer Jack Redcloud, whose heavily decorated skin fascinated her enough that he introduced her to celebrated tattooist Charlie Wagner. Before long, Betty herself was becoming an artwork. Wagner, Tony Reinhardt, Joe Van Hart, and Red Gibbons eventually covered her with hundreds of designs, reportedly more than 565 by 1927. The result earned her the name the Tattooed Venus, and a place with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey through Wagner's connection to promoter Clyde Ingalls. Yet standing around while strangers inspected her tattoos wasn't enough for Betty. She trained as a steer rider, appeared alongside cowboy star Tom Mix, and later took her own show through Australia and New Zealand. Her career continued until 1967. She died in 1983. Number 5. Anna Swan. By the time most children were learning their alphabet, Anna was already around 4.5 feet tall. Her growth showed little sign of slowing. At 10, she measured 6 feet 1 inch, and adulthood brought her to about 7 feet 5 inches. That height caught Barnum's eye, and 17-year-old Anna joined his American Museum in New York. Fame nearly turned deadly in 1865 when fire tore through the building. Anna was too large to escape normally, forcing rescuers to break through a wall and help her reach safety with ropes and pulleys. She survived and continued traveling, eventually appearing before Queen Victoria. Then came perhaps the most fitting romance imaginable. Anna married Martin Van Buren, another celebrated giant who stood close to her height. Their wedding naturally became a sensation, but Anna was remembered for much more than being tall. She was educated, musically talented, and remarkably composed, which made the woman behind those astonishing measurements every bit as interesting. Number 4. Gladys Roy. Having 3 brothers who flew for Northwest Airlines might have been enough aviation for one family. But Gladys Roy found a far more dangerous way into the sky. Instead of remaining safely inside an aircraft, the Minnesota Daredevil climbed onto its wings. Soon, she was walking, dancing the Charleston, and making transfers between planes thousands of feet above the ground. Her famous photographs with Ivan Unger pushed the madness even further. The pair appeared to play tennis on a flying biplane, complete with rackets, although wisely without a ball. At her height, Gladys could earn $200 to $500 for one appearance. By 1926, however, spectators were becoming harder to impress, something she openly worried would force performers toward increasingly dangerous stunts. Strangely, the sky never took her life. While preparing for a publicity photograph that August, Gladys stepped into a spinning aircraft propeller and died instantly. After surviving countless risks above the clouds, an ordinary moment on the ground ended everything. She was only 25. All right, guys. Now let's move to number 3. Melvin Burkhart. Melvin could do things with his body that would make most of us uncomfortable just watching. He could suck his stomach inward until it appeared almost hollow, force his shoulder blades outward, stretch his neck strangely, and manipulate each side of his face separately. That insane control opened the door to vaudeville while Melvin was still young, but he wasn't satisfied with a handful of tricks. Over the years, he learned fire-eating, sword-swallowing, knife-throwing, and eventually, the stunt that made his name impossible to forget. After an earlier boxing injury damaged the cartilage in his nose, Melvin discovered he could carefully slide long nails into his nasal passage. Audiences watched in disbelief as he hammered them inward, earning him the title, the Human Blockhead. Despite how brutal the routine appeared, technique mattered far more than force. Melvin understood his anatomy and knew precisely where the nail could safely travel. He performed into old age, turning one deeply uncomfortable talent into an entire career. Number 2. Katie Sandwina's strength ran through Katie's family, although it didn't take long before she became the one everybody else struggled to match. Raised around a traveling Austrian strongman troupe, she spent her younger years watching feats that would exhaust most adults. Then, learned to perform them herself. By the time Katie reached adulthood, bending steel and lifting heavy weights had become part of her routine. She could even raise her husband, Max Heyman, straight over her head, a sight that delighted circus crowds wherever they traveled. Her reputation eventually carried her to Barnum and Bailey, where the woman known as Sandwina became one of the great strong women of her era. The power was impressive enough, but Katie never came across as a cold exhibition of muscle. She had charm, confidence, and an easy presence that audiences warmed to. During a period when women were expected to appear delicate, Katie happily did the opposite. She lifted, bent, carried, and left plenty of supposedly stronger men looking rather ordinary. Number 1. The Bear Woman of Coney Island. Some say she came from India. Some say even that part of Alice Bounds' story may have been shaped by the showman who promoted her. What audiences could see, however, was unusual enough without any added tail. Her joints were severely displaced, leaving her elbows close to where wrists would normally sit and her knees near the position of ankles. Because of this, Alice moved comfortably on all fours, and circus promoters immediately saw a character they could build around her. At Coney Island's Dreamland sideshow, she became known as the She-Bear and Ursa the Bear Girl. A heavy fur costume completed the appearance, making her movements look eerily bare like beneath the lights. Yet underneath that costume was a woman whose physical difference had been turned into entertainment for strangers. Alice continued appearing into the early 1900s, leaving behind a story that feels both fascinating and uncomfortable. The costume was fake. The person inside it was entirely real. If you found this inspiring, be sure to give it a like and subscribe. Until then, take care, and we'll see you soon.